Nose Hill.
On Friday, the Prime Minister told Canada's first female finance minister, but she was fired, but sweet and present their wildly overspent budget on Monday so that he and an unelected man, Mark Carbon Tax Carney, wouldn't take the blame for their broken budget. He then, unbothered, released a video of him making cinnamon buns to get the women folks vote. How can any woman in that caucus defend that man instead of calling for an election now?
Did he really make a video making cinnamons? That's misogynistic.
Order. The Honourable Leader of the Government in the House of Commons.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I didn't realize cinnamon buns were a gendered food, but what I would say is that her...
what a tool.
How that member and conservative...
Ain't no dude knows how to make cinnabuns.
...country than anything else. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
The Honourable Member for Calgary Nose Hill.
Are facing violence in the streets. They can't afford groceries. They can't afford to buy presents for their kids for the holidays. They can't afford anything. Canadian women are far worse off under this fake feminist Prime Minister. And now he fired Canada's first female finance minister because she dared question him. That sounds pretty familiar. No strong women exist in that caucus. Why would any woman defend this man instead of calling for an election?
The Honourable Leader of the Government in the House of Commons.
You know, Mr. Speaker, I have a lot of respect for that member opposite, but I think she's speaking from her own experience with the Leader of the official opposition when she said that she wasn't going to support him and then spent a year in the hinterlands, Mr. Speaker. But what I will say is that when it comes to actually doing things that support women, we have done that on this side of the House. Whether it's affordable childcare that is making it possible for hundreds of thousands of women to join the workforce, making contraceptions free, or the Canada Child Benefit that is helping families pay the bills. And what do Conservative members of Parliament do every time? They vote against them. So actions speak louder than words, Mr. Speaker.
Ooh, look at you trying to stand up for yourself.
The member for Wellington Halton Hills.
Mr. Speaker, this Prime Minister has lost control. He's lost control of the economy. He's lost control of immigration. He's lost control of so many files. And now he's lost control of the government. It's long past time for an election. This Prime Minister has sat too long here for any good that he has been doing. In the name of God, will he go to Rideau Hall, call an election, and end the chaos?
There you go. That's something that we can all agree on.
Order. The Honourable Leader of the Government in the House of Commons.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, as you well know, and as every member in this place knows, just because a Conservative member of Parliament wishes something does not mean that it actually happens. But what happened over the past couple of weeks, Mr. Speaker, is the government secured the confidence of this House. And the government does enjoy the confidence of this House, Mr. Speaker, and that is why we will be presenting the fall economic statement later today, which we look forward to sharing with Canadians. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
This week, Prime Minister has lost control. Carbon Tax Carney wrote the fiscal update, filled it with poison pills, so he could blame the finance minister while pushing her off the fiscal cliff, so he can take her job and eventually the Prime Minister's job. The finance minister figured out the plan, so she resigned in protest. She said she no longer has confidence in this weak Prime Minister and Carbon Tax Carney's plan. If the Prime Minister's own caucus and cabinet don't have confidence in him, even though the leader of the NDP does, why should Canadians?
The Honourable Minister for Housing, Infrastructure and Communities.
Mr. Speaker, in a moment where Canadians are looking for leadership, the Conservative asking the question can only come up with names to lobby towards his opponents.
Oh, this guy is so funny. This is his last day, by the way. Whenever question period is done for the holidays, you won't see Sean Fraser anymore because he's going to be shuffled out. That's why he resigned. So in case you're wondering why you're seeing him right now, it's just a formality at this point.
Hear the question and hear the answer. The Honourable Minister, from the start.
From the top.
Mr. Speaker, the very best that the Conservatives can offer to this conversation is name-calling, mudslinging, not solutions to the problems that Canadians are facing. When I talk to people at home, they want their governments to be focusing on creating good jobs to make sure people can afford to put food on the table. They want to make sure that governments are advancing policies to invest in healthcare and housing. They want to make sure we're doing more to protect the environment. Every time we put policies on the table to accomplish these ends, the Conservatives throw their hands up in the air, vote against, and just sling mud towards their opponents. That is not what people in my community want. It is not what Canadians deserve. We're going to advance solutions that introduce real and meaningful changes that will benefit people who live in this country.
I'm just going to ask the honourable member from Dufferin Caledon, please, to hold off on making comments while the other people have the floor. The honourable member from Calgary Forest Lawn.
He's right. After 9 years of that incompetent minister and the Prime Minister, Canadians are looking for leadership. Carbon tax Carney's Canadian comeback fueled a fiscal feud for the former finance minister. Carney wrote the fiscal update, pushed insane inflationary spending, and brought in the 2-month tax trick while trying to blame the finance minister for taking Canada's finances off a cliff. Will he stop passing the blame on to women in his caucus and call a carbon tax election now so common sense Conservatives can give the power back to Canadians?
The Honourable Minister for Housing, Infrastructure and Communities.
Mr. Speaker, I was wrong before when I said all they had was name-calling. Apparently they have alliteration as well. But, Mr. Speaker, that is not going to put food on the table for people who need it in my community or his. It is not going to put a roof over the head of people who are vulnerable in this country. Mr. Speaker, if he wants to make this argument about whether women will be supported, I wonder if he has ever approached the leader of the Conservative Party about using hashtags to specifically attract the attention of men who hate women to...
That's not at all true.
He's asked questions about why he's cancelled the investigation as to who was behind it, or perhaps it's because he knows it was the Conservative leader himself.
Fake news. Never been faker.
The Honourable Member for Leeds, Grenville, Thousand Islands and Rideau Lakes.
After 9 years of this NDP Liberal government, everything is out of control. Home prices have doubled. Food bank use is seeing 2 million users in a single month. And the real fiscal advisor to this Prime Minister wrote the financial update for this afternoon. It included a temporary 2-month tax trick and is set to smash through the massive $40 billion deficit promise that was made by the Finance Minister. And when they tried to blame the economic vandalism on her, she quit, saying that she doesn't have confidence in this Prime Minister. Now, they can't tell us how much they've spent. They can't tell us who's in charge. How can anyone have confidence in this Prime Minister?
Yeah, not a single person can.
The Honourable Minister for Housing, Infrastructure and Communities.
Mr. Speaker, the Conservatives seem to know the cost of everything but the value of nothing. They do not see value in investing in childcare, which has not only reduced costs for families, but led to the largest increase in women's participation in the labour force in the history of this country. They don't seem to believe there is value in investing in social housing, in public housing, in affordable housing, so everyone in this country can have a roof over their head. They don't believe in the value of the Canada Child Benefit, which is ensuring middle-class families in this country can put food on the table. So before he continues to sling mud and arrows on this side of the House, he perhaps should look inward and ask why he is not even allowed to advocate on behalf of his community, because his leader has said that's just not in order.
Not to worry, we won't be seeing him for much longer.
The Honourable Member for Leeds, Grenville, Thousand Islands and Rideau Lakes.
Yeah, we talk about having confidence. This is coming from a minister who said just today that he's not going to continue to serve in the cabinet of that Prime Minister. Just like the finance minister who said she doesn't have confidence, or the 7 other ministers over there, or the 1 in 5 Liberal MPs who said they don't have confidence in this NDP Liberal Prime Minister who broke housing, who broke immigration, who broke our finances in this country. These Liberals talk about costs, but they have absolutely no idea how much they've spent. No government has ever spent so much to achieve as little as this government has. We know why the NDP leader has confidence in this Prime Minister. It's for his pension. But why should Canadians?
Well said. Put some W's in the chat for that. That was pretty good.
Minister for Housing, Infrastructure and Communities.
Mr. Speaker, my honourable colleague is right about one thing. I did announce this morning that I'm not going to be seeking re-election. But I can tell you, if he thinks that's a matter of confidence, I can tell him it's that I have confidence. I am going to be the best father to my kids that I could possibly be for the rest of
Yeah,
my life.
nobody cares about that, though. Your job is to be a politician. We don't care about your personal life.
Thank you for the opportunity to engage in the TED its head over the years. This may be one of the last opportunities that I have, and I want to use it to make this point. Canadians want governments to invest to increase the quality of life that they get to enjoy. We seem not to be able to agree on that basic tenet. On this side of the House, we will put measures in place to support families, not advocate for cuts.
His last ever at bat, and he got cut off. Put some L's in the chat for Sean Fraser. Oh, that's so funny.
Quote, the Deputy Prime
He got cut off for time.
when we're working for them, and they know.
Carbon tax Carney is the Prime Minister's official economic advisor, and his plan was always to push out the Finance Minister and take her place. Let's look at his advice so far. He forced her to bring in the GST tax trick. Carney also forced through insane inflationary spending, smashing through that $40 billion guardrail. Carney's economic plan is so bad, the Finance Minister resigned in protest rather than humiliate herself into reading his homework. Now nobody knows who the Finance Minister is. Mr. Speaker, enough is enough. Why won't the Prime Minister do the only honourable thing left and let Canadians decide for themselves in a carbon tax election?
Well said, Mr. Scheer.
Honourable Leader of the Government in the House of Commons.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Another day, another attack against Canadians from the Conservative Party of Canada. Anytime someone steps up who disagrees with their vision for Canada, what do? Personal attacks, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, Canadians deserve better than the slogans and personal attacks that we get from Conservative members of Parliament. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
The Honourable Member for Regina Capel.
The attacks on this government's economic record are coming from inside the Liberals' own cabinet, Mr. Speaker. And it looks more and more like Carbon Tax Carney's plan to push out the Prime Minister is working as well, too. For Carbon Tax Carney has always been profits over people. Look at his record. Since he became the top economic advisor to the PM, he's moved his own company's headquarters to New York City. He got caught unethically lobbying the UK government. And his firm Brookfield is now looking for $10 billion in taxpayers' money for a new investment fund, which would be managed by Brookfield, his own company. Mr. Speaker, Canadians deserve better than this government in shambles. Why not call a carbon tax election and let Canadians decide for themselves?
Let the people decide.
Government in the House of Commons.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, this is the people's house, and in it we should be debating things that are pertinent to the administration of government. But what we hear from the House Leader from the Conservative Party of Canada is attacks on Canadians, Mr. Speaker. The person he is talking about is not a sitting member of Parliament, is not a cabinet minister. It is someone that they are attacking simply because they do not share their vision of Canada.
Shut the hell up.
Every single Canadian deserves better than what we hear from the opposition today. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
The Honourable Member for Stormont Dundas, South Glengarry.
The Prime Minister's lost control. Hours before delivering a fiscal update, the Finance Minister resigned, joining 1/5 of the Liberal caucus and saying she doesn't have confidence in the Prime Minister either. And there's only one person left keeping this Prime Minister in power, and that's the Leader of the NDP. The fall budget is scheduled to be tabled in 54 minutes, and we don't even know who the Finance Minister is. The Liberals' own cabinet order on succession states if it's not her, it's the Industry Minister, but he says he doesn't want to. So that means it's supposed to go to the disgraced member from Edmonton Centre. The question is, will the other Randy be Canada's next Finance Minister? And how much is he investing in fraud?
Yeah, there you go. That's Randy's plan all along. Wants to be the Finance Minister so he can pretend to be Strong Eagle Man with billions of dollars or whatever the hell they called him.
Again, I've asked members to please not do indirectly what they can't do directly by referring to a member by their first name. The Honourable...
They're referring to the other Randy.
The Honourable Leader of the Government in the House of Commons.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Again, all we see from Conservative members of Parliament is personal attacks and mudslinging against Mr. Speaker, what we need to be doing right now is standing united for our country, making sure that we are protecting the Canadian economy, Canadian jobs, and making things a little bit easier for Canadians. We look
Hit them when they're down.
the fall economic statement later this afternoon. Thank you.
Hit them when they're down. Hit them when they're down. Trample them.
Prime Minister is spiraling so bad, and his obsession for power is dangerous. It's actually dangerous, and it is killing people every day. In Peterborough, and the Peterborough and area families are suffering the greatest rates of food insecurity ever recorded. Do you know what food insecurity means, Mr. Speaker? Starvation, hunger, children. Enough. This is as serious as it gets. The finance minister quit hours before she was supposed to do this, and she doesn't have confidence in this prime minister. No one does. This man is a disgrace, and we need an election now.
Yes, we do. Yes, ma'am.
Ask member, please, to be very judicious in referring to any member in this place. Order. Order. The Honourable Minister for Families, Children and Social Development.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. On this side of the House, we've made investments to ensure that Canadians, including those in Peterborough, Kawartha, have the support that they need, whether that be through affordable childcare, whether that be through an HST.
Nails on a chalkboard, eh? Isn't that brutal?
People of Peterborough, Kawartha can rely on us, can know that we on this side of the House will fight for them when their Member of Parliament will do everything they can to oppose these supports.